Let me show you the best way to get your oven nice and clean with these simple steps. The first place to always start is to remove the racks. Now, the reason this is so important is usually these get pretty greasy and grimy, and they're kind of hard to clean just because there's so many edges to them. And like this one here, the bottom is full of grime. So what I like to do is actually take these, drop them in my bathtub, or if you don't have a bathtub, you can use like a plastic bin. Put some warm water in there and then a Cascade dishwasher pod. Now, the reason this works so well is it does a good job in your dishwasher to break down grease and grime. So it does the same thing on the grates here. And we're just gonna let those soak and let that do its thing while we clean the rest of the inside of the oven. Now, before I start using any cleaners on the inside of the oven, I like to first remove any crumbs or burnt food that usually is on the bottom here. I know for us, it feels like anytime I make a frozen pizza, there's that one piece of cheese that falls down and then just burns to a crisp. So I like to remove those first just because this is gonna make cleaning the bottom and getting to that really baked on grease and grime so much easier. So to do this, you can either just use a vacuum cleaner like I like to use, or just a brush, or just pick them up by hand with maybe like a piece of paper towel. But the goal here is to remove as much of that as possible before we start cleaning. Sometimes while you're vacuuming, you may notice a few areas like this here that are kind of just really stuck on. So I like to just grab a simple little plastic putty knife here, just give it a quick little scrape. That'll kind of loosen that up. Then you can either vacuum it up if you want, or just grab a quick paper towel here and get rid of it. When it comes to picking the right cleaner to clean your oven, there's a ton on the market, and sometimes it can be a little confusing of exactly what one is going to do the best job. Now, over my many years of professional cleaning, I've tested just about every single one of them, and I keep coming back to two. Now, for a more all-natural option, my go-to is just some simple baking soda and vinegar. I'll talk about the right way to use that here in a second. The other more store-bought option, and this one's more strong, and obviously too with oven cleaners, you wanna be careful, but this one here from Zepp, the oven and grill cleaner, does an amazing job, and it does it pretty quick. Now, when it comes to using the baking soda and vinegar, I feel like kind of a broken record some days, but please do not mix them together. That reaction is cool, and it looks like it's doing a lot, but really it just turns it into salt water, and that's not very good at cleaning. So instead, I suggest to use them separately and kind of in tandem. So essentially come through, make a paste with the baking soda with just a little bit of water. This is really gonna be that aggressive scrubbing power that's gonna break the surface tension of the grease and hopefully kind of get it to loosen up from the surface. And then once that's nice and scrubbed up, we're gonna remove that just with a damp towel. Then we're gonna come through with the vinegar and we're gonna spray that down and remove any grease and grime that's left behind from the scrubbing. I will say this method does require a little bit more elbow grease and scrubbing, but stick with it, you got this. And I just like that it is an all natural option that does a great job. Something I've learned as a pro cleaner is that you're always looking for ways to save time and energy. And when it comes to cleaning an oven, sometimes it's just best to use an oven cleaner. Now, like I mentioned, this one here from Zepp does a really good job, and I feel like it does it really quick. But anytime you use an oven cleaner, there's always a few things to keep in mind. Number one, you wanna make sure to do it in a highly ventilated area. So maybe open some windows or turn some fans on. And number two, wear some proper PPE, wear gloves and glasses if you like. Now, the other thing I will say with this is you wanna make sure not to get it on anything else. If you have like a stainless steel, like this oven here has the stainless steel bottom here, you wanna protect that with some towels if possible, because if this gets on the stainless steel, it's going to etch. Now again, because it's so powerful, it does the job a little bit quicker, but those are just a few things to keep in mind. When it comes to using any oven cleaner, and this kind of just applies for really cleaning everything, is you always want to let your cleaner have time to work. But especially, it seems like oven cleaners really need a little extra time. And plus, like I mentioned before, I'm trying to save energy and time, so spray it down evenly across the entire oven and just let it do its thing. Now the bottle here says 10 minutes. I usually recommend anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour if you can, just because again, it's gonna emulsify all of that grease and grime, making it so much easier to wipe away. Now, a question I get all the time is what do I do around the heating element here? Now, what I like to do is just simply lift it up very gently. You don't wanna damage it. And then we're gonna spray underneath. Make sure to get the bottom of the oven here as best as possible, because usually this is where all the grease and grime likes to sit. Now, if you do happen to get any oven cleaner on the actual heating element itself, that's okay. I just recommend using a damp towel. Clean that really good to remove it and rinse it off the surface. So as we wait for the cleaner to do its thing, if you come in close here to this oven, you'll notice there is a self-clean function. Now, anytime I do an oven cleaning video or talk about cleaning ovens, I always get a comment, Brandon, just use the self-clean. Now, I don't recommend it because really any appliance repair person I've ever talked to says not to use it because it can damage the oven itself and it's a really big fire hazard to use. It actually will heat up to almost 800 degrees to burn off all the grease and grime. And in doing so, that can melt things like fuses, internal components. I've even seen the control panel get wonky and melt on some of the plastic ones. So really, it's better just to clean it yourself than take the risk and use that option. So now that the cleaner has broken down all the grease and grime and had time to work, I just grab some damp microfiber towels and wipe and rinse everything down. Now, one note, if you do like to use towels like me, it's always a good idea to do a section, then give the towel a real good rinse. Continually rinsing them will help them stay in better shape. Now, when you're cleaning your oven, it can kind of be a little bit of a back-breaking job just because it's so hard to reach inside over the door. Now, some ovens actually have latches like this one here that pull up and you're actually able to remove the door from the oven itself. Now, words of caution here, usually it's best to do this with another person if you've never done it before, just because it can be a little tricky to get it off and the door's kind of heavy as well. And then putting it back on can be a little tricky too. Just be careful, use caution if you're going to do this. I don't want you to see you break anything or have any damage caused. I've seen some videos online of people taking them off and the doors shattering and things. The other thing I will say as well is just check your manufacturer's instructions because everyone's a little bit different. So you just want to make sure you do it the right way. Once everything is nice and rinsed, you're probably gonna have a few areas, especially in the bottom of your oven like this here. If you come close, you'll notice this char is just stuck on the bottom and it has not budged at all. Now, I know from experience, can you scrub that away? Yes, but it's gonna take a lot of effort. So the secret weapon to get rid of that is just this tool here, a razor blade scraper. Now, anytime I mention using a razor blade scraper, I also like to mention a few cautionary things to always keep in mind. First, always lubricate the surface. So I'll probably just use a little bit more of this oven cleaner here. That way it's not going to scratch. Go really slow and just gentle with it. You don't have to gouge into it. Really, once your blade gets underneath the grime there, it's gonna lift it right up super easy. And then the other thing is just make sure to always use a new blade and one that does not have any rust on it because that could cause a scratch. There are some times where I have to scrub the oven if it's really bad. And for that, I just like to use either a Scrub Daddy or these here from Scrub Daddy called a Scour Daddy. These I feel just work really well, especially on the texture interior surface of your oven. Now, just a word of caution, and again, I just don't want you guys to ruin any of your items while you're cleaning, and that's to never use the green and yellow scrubbers, those really aggressive ones, just because they can scratch the interior surface of your oven, and I've even seen that start to rust over time after those are used. Now, when it comes to cleaning the ceiling of your oven here, it can be a little tricky just because usually this heating coil does not move at all. So usually I just recommend to scrub and wipe down and rinse as best you can. So now that the inside of the oven is nice and clean, it's time to come back to the bathtub here and finish up the racks. Now, these have obviously been soaking the entire time we've been cleaning, which is great because it really helps break down the grease and grime. And you might be wondering, Brandon, why did you use a dishwasher pod maybe instead of just a degreaser like Dawn dish soap? Well, the reason being is the dishwasher pods have enzymes in them to break down grease and grime on your plates and things. And you need those enzymes to break down all the grime that are on your grates. So this does a great job. You'll notice, I'll just grab the Scour Daddy here. This is pretty bad, but just with one quick swipe back and forth, and pretty much all of the grease and grime is gone. Now, sometimes you might run across a few of these grates that are just really bad, and it depends the last time too you clean your oven. If it's really greasy, you might have to jump up to some steel wool here. This is grade 00040, but it's the ultra fine, and this is gonna cut through any remaining grease and grime. Now, you don't necessarily have to do this step, but once everything is nice and clean, I do like to come through with just a damp towel and just give everything one final rinse. Anytime I'm using oven cleaner, I just don't want to leave that behind. So by giving it one last rinse, and I'll just come through and wipe with a clean, dry microfiber towel, I make sure there's no residue left behind. So once the racks are nice and clean, it's time to put them back in the oven, and if you took your door off, put that back on too. And there you have it, this oven cleaned up great. Now, if you'd like to get a PDF guide of today's clean, consider subscribing to our Patreon account and join the Clean Squad. We have a ton of fun over there and we'd love to have you. Thanks so much for watching as always, and if you have any questions, drop a comment down below, or if you're new here, consider subscribing, and as always, I'll see you on the next clean.